Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome yet again to another episode of Lunch Guide. My name is Chef Andy, and today we are going to be focusing on, as usual, budget-friendly, cost-effective and easy to make recipes for your lunch boxes, for your kids and yourself. And today I'm going to be specializing on some grilled mbuzi or some grilled lamb. We're also going to be doing some garlic mashed potatoes, and we're going to also to be doing some celery sticks. So without further ado, I'll first of all start by introducing my ingredients. So from the front I have some salt and one clove of garlic there. I've also got some tomato paste, 1 cube of stock cube. I've got some butter, some beautiful fresh coriander. I've got some thyme, some mixed spices, some minced ginger, 1 chili pepper. I've also got some tomatoes. I've also got some potatoes, some fresh parsley, some peas, a bit of some mbuzi ribs there, and 1 red and white onion. I'm also going to be using some regular water there, some celery sticks, some milk, and last but not least, some vegetable oil. So if you're going to be taking some recipes down, this is your chance to grab your pens and papers, and when we come back, we're going to just dive in, and I'm going to show you how to make this very, very simple ingredients into something very, very likable. So don't touch that dial, we'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you're just catching up with us, as I mentioned earlier in the show, in the introduction to the show, we're going to be focusing on some beautiful recipes this particular beginning part of the year. And as I said, we're going to be focusing on, first of all, time. We're going to be focusing on cost and the simplicity of making some very, very easy to make lunch boxes for you and your family. So we're going to start off with some of the ingredients on the sides here. So I'll first off start with the ribs, and we're just going to unwrap that quickly. So very, very important, just for the ribs, just to get started, we're going to start off by marinating our ribs. Remember, we're going to be grilling them, which particularly means I'm going to be putting them in the oven. So at this particular stage, we're just going to start off by marinating our meat. So I'm just going to move my lamb into the bowl. And then next off, we're going to be adding to that 2 teaspoons of some dried thyme. We're also going to add 1 teaspoon of some mixed spices. And last but not least, some minced ginger. And just for seasoning, pinch of salt. And all you want to do now is just give that a mix. So particularly, I will not be marinating this, and I'll not be adding any oil to it because the lamb has quite a bit of fat to it. So we're just going to let that grill in its own oil, in its own fat. So what you want to do in this particular stage is be sure to mix through really, really well. And we're going to add just a bit of salt for flavor. And we'll also add about half a piece of stock cube. So all you want to do at this stage is just crumble it around your bowl and just save the rest for later. Alright, so what you want to do is give that a nice thorough mix. Just make sure you have your meat coated really well with the spices. And now to that, we will just basically cover this and allow this to marinate for about an hour. We do have a mixture that we marinated a little earlier, so we'll be pulling that out of our refrigerator in a little bit. So what you want to do in this particular stage is just cover your meat. Remember, it's always advisable, if you're going to be marinating meat, very advisable that you do it beforehand. Remember, the longer your meat marinates, the more the flavors develop and the more the flavors will really stand out. So what you want to do is always give your meat quite a bit of time to marinate. So we're going to be marinating this for about 3 to 4 hours. But as I mentioned, we will pull out a mixture that we did a little earlier, and that's the one that we'll be putting in our oven. So we're just going to allow that to rest. And while that continues to rest, I'm just going to preheat my oven, sorry. And we're going to just allow that a few minutes just to heat through. But while that continues, we're going to chop some of our onions. So I'm going to be using half a red onion and half a white onion. So just take the skins off like so. Right, so particularly with the lamb recipe, this recipe will actually work very well with different cuts of lamb. You can actually speak to your butcher and they will actually be able to advise you on very, very many other beautiful cuts that will work really well with this dish. But particularly for this one, I'm going to be working with just regular ribs. Right, so we're just going to start off by chopping our onions very finely. So I will start by just adding my chopped red onions into a pot on the side here, and to that I will also add about 2 cups of water, about 1.5 cups of water, and a pinch of salt. And what you want to do is basically just get that going. And what we do is we're going to leave that covered and just allow it to come to the boil. And what we're going to do basically with that is we're going to be cooking our potatoes in there. So the onions are going to actually give it a very, very beautiful flavor. And when that is actually cooked through, we're going to mash them together, and I'll show you how to do that just in a little bit. In the meantime, we're also going to chop up our white onion into half moon sizes. And this we will add to a bowl. And we'll also add our celery sticks in there. So we're going to be cutting this into about 1-inch lengths, about that size. So I'm going to be using about 2 pieces of celery stick. And to that we will add just a bit of oil, just a bit of salt, and just give that a quick mix. Alright, so basically this we're actually going to be serving this as a salad on its own. So basically we're just going to serve that simply as it is. So we're just going to let that sit on the side briefly. Alright, and our water is now just about getting to the boil. We're just going to allow that another few minutes. And in the meantime, we'll proceed to cut up one of these tomatoes. And what you want to do, particularly with tomatoes, if you're going to be serving tomatoes raw or to incorporate that into a salad, very, very crucial that you actually give it just a bit of flavor. And this we will simply do by sprinkling just a bit of salt on the insides. And And all you need to do now is give that a few minutes just to sit on the side and basically just allow it to just absorb the salt in there. And now just bring your attention this way. So our water is now just about coming to the boil. And all we are going to do is add in our potatoes. So I'm just going to add them in whole. And we're just going to keep that covered. Remember, we're going to be making some mashed potatoes, so you want to actually cook those for about 8 to 10 minutes until they're just soft, or rather until they're soft enough to actually be able to mash. And we're basically just going to be incorporating some garlic in there. So we definitely will have to peel a bit of garlic. So I'm just going to grab one of my garlic cloves. Just get rid of all that extra juice. So I'm going to be using about 2 to 3 pieces of garlic clove. And all we are going to do is just use our knife and our board just to help us to aid us in peeling the garlic. So just take the skins out really easily. It actually peels as quick as that. And all you want to do now is add your garlic to a mortar. And just to be able to actually get some grip in there, we're going to add also just a bit of salt. And just proceed to mince. Alright, so basically as soon as your garlic is minced, we're just going to leave that on the side. Now we're just going to slide into a short commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to take out some ribs out of the fridge, and I'll be able to show you just a very, very simple process of how to actually put them into the oven. And then we're just going to proceed and get to the mash, and I'll show you also some very, very, very beautiful tricks to actually make your mash a little more colorful for your kids and a little more appetizing, which is basically why we'll be incorporating some of this beautiful fresh peas. So please don't touch the dial. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you are just catching up, if you were with us earlier, remember we were doing some potatoes which are now ready. So we're just going to turn off the heat. So for those of you who are just catching up, we were basically making boiling some potatoes which we're going to make some mash with. We also had some ribs that were in the fridge, and we're also going to take out some that had actually marinated in advance, which we're actually going to throw in the oven. But we'll start off by first draining our potatoes. So I'm just going to pour that whole mixture into my sieve here. And we're just going to discard the water. We're just going to give that just a few minutes to cool off. And while that continues, we're just going to pull out some goat that we had actually marinated in advance. So we're basically now going to just quickly throw this in the oven. So already I have my oven set at 200 degrees and it's already preheated. So remember, we had actually marinated some goat earlier, so this is one that we had done before. So very, very simple process. You will just require a dish or something that actually is oven proof. So stainless steel or glass bowl will do really well. I'm also going to use just some foil paper. So very simple to that. You will only add just a bit of oil at the bottom of your foil paper and just spread it out with your fingertips. So this particularly will do two things. First of all, remember foil actually helps you to save up on waste, save up on soap and a whole lot of other entities. But particularly for this reason, I'm using foil just to protect my bowl and just to keep it clean. So this is actually just going to be discarded. But if you don't have any aluminium foil at home, you could actually just bake it as usual and just rinse your container like you do in any other situation. So very, very simply, we're just going to grab our goat. And we're just going to move that into a baking dish. And then just finish that off with just a pinch of salt for flavor. And this will now go into the oven for about 20 minutes. So just to remind you, our oven is set at 200. We're going to be cooking that for about 10 to 15 minutes or 20 on the highest end. And while that continues, I do have a portion here that we had actually cooked a little earlier. So I'm actually just going to show you how to finish this off. But before we do so, I'm just going to divert your attention again back to the potatoes. So I'm just going to have the same pot going. And to that, we will be adding about a teaspoon of unsalted butter. I will also be adding a few of my peas. So we're going to be using about half a cup of some steamed green peas. To that, we will also be incorporating some of that garlic we minced a little earlier. Remember, we are making a garlic mashed potato, so it is very important that you do have your garlic in there. So I'm using fresh garlic. Remember, if you're thinking of using garlic powder, it might not give you the same result. It might not be as pungent. So I recommend, if you're going to be using garlic, stick with fresh garlic. It's a little more pungent, a little more fresher with flavor. So we're just going to saute our peas in there about a minute. And just as soon as you start getting that beautiful fragrance from the garlic, we're just going to go in and add our potatoes. And we're just going to saute that a little more. Right. So at this stage you will actually need your masher, but remember, if you don't have a masher, you can actually use a wooden spoon. It will still give you the same result. So all we're going to do now is turn the heat really low, and we're just going to start off by mashing up everything together. So remember, you can actually do the mashed potatoes without the peas, but as I said, if you're looking to actually give it a bit of a beautiful finish, some peas will really do a good job. Right, so to that we will add just a little bit of milk. And just continue mashing just up until your potatoes are nice and creamy and your milk is completely absorbed. And now once you're done with your masher, you can actually take that out and just continue mixing through with a wooden spoon, and your mashed potatoes is done. It's as simple as that. So remember, we are going to be doing some lunch boxes. So this is basically why I have the containers here. And I actually have a smaller one here, which is basically to be able to illustrate a child portion, and the bigger one, which is just to illustrate an adult portion. So particularly with the beautiful thing with lock and lock containers, remember it comes with this movable compartments, which actually allow you to portion out your food. And we're just going to start off portioning that in a little while. So I'm just going to leave that there. All right, so our mashed potatoes are done. We're just going to leave that on the side briefly. And in a fresh pan, we're just going to finish off our grilled mbuzi. So very, very simple. You're going to require a bit of some coriander and some parsley. So we're just going to chop those up really finely. Right, so you have your chopped parsley now. We're also going to be using some tomato paste. I'll also be using just a little bit of this beautiful red chili. And we're just going to chop that finely as well. So be sure to actually discard the seeds. Remember, if you're trying to make, if you're just trying to give it a little bit of flavor, always discard the seeds from your chilies. It will actually make it less hot for your kids and for yourself. So into a pan, just going to add about a tablespoon of cooking oil. We're just going to allow that to come to just to heat up slightly. And while that continues, I'm just going to grab my first insert, and to that we will just add that beautiful mashed potato. Remember, one particular thing to remember about beautiful mashed potatoes, particularly very important, it's very important that you serve them a little creamy. Remember, dry mashed potatoes actually become very boring, and actually they become very boring and not pleasant to enjoy with your food. So particularly if you're making a lunchbox, always make sure your mashed potatoes are slightly a little more creamier. Remember, when the mashed potatoes cool off, they will actually solidify. So always just add that little bit of milk in there just to allow it to be a little moist when it goes into your container. And to one of the other containers as well, I'm going to be adding our simple celery salad. So remember, for those of you who missed out on this, all I added to this was a bit of olive oil, a bit of some onions, and a bit of salt for seasoning. So this will actually go really well with your goat. Right, so simple as that. We're just going to slide that in there and then come back to this end. And now here our pan is now nice and smoky. We are just going to start off by adding our goat. We will also be adding about a teaspoon of tomato paste. And to that we will now add our chilies and our chopped parsley and our chopped coriander. And all you want to do, remember, your goat is already cooked, so this is basically just to coat the meat. So all you need to do now is just give that a quick mixture in your pan. You'll add just a little bit of oil. Right, so you want to just mix that through for about a minute and a half, and then just turn off the heat. And now your mbuzi is just basically ready to serve. So I'm just going to grab my container and just proceed to plate everything else. Right, so we're just going to use as much of the space in that container as we have. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is now done. So basically it is as simple as that. And I actually like to add just a little bit of color to my salad. So remember, we have this beautiful tomatoes earlier. So this, I would just basically just add about 2 pieces to that, and that will actually aid in giving you a very simple and refreshing salad with your lunch pack. So ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned earlier, we were making some very simple grilled mbuzi with some beautiful garlic mashed potatoes. and a very, very simple celery salad with some onions and tomatoes. I hope you've actually enjoyed the episode today, and I hope you've actually managed to grasp something that you can actually improvise in your own kitchen at home. And I hope you're definitely going to be looking forward to try this yourselves. So we have come to the end of the show. Thank you very much for tuning in. I will also remind you to check out our videos on YouTube, and also if you do have any comments, enquiries, or any particular questions pertaining the show or the dish in particular, do write to us, do leave your comments, your inquiries, and we'll be definitely looking forward to getting back to you. So from the studios and myself, thank you very much for tuning in today, and have a lovely day. See you soon.